Okay, so, let's- okay, there. Okay, so again, this is actually something that the CCP meeting or the committee actually wanted to have last year. And so it was worked on in the summer. And I had been working with this with Anna Holmes from legal. And the intent was to have a better streamlined process to understand or have a better understanding for board members and commissioners of expectations as they are serving through the city of Bloomington. And so I actually kind of mirrored something of this to the city's HR policy handbook. So the main concerns were just trying to figure out what's expected of them in terms of attendance, how to act as, or how to address themselves as they are, um, I don't know, I'm blanking, I've had long nights this week. So there literally is just, let me rewind and sing. All right, goody. So, essentially, what we are doing here is just to have an expectation of all board members and commissioners throughout the city, and the intent is for new members and existing members, they are to sign this. So that if there is any behavioral issues or any things that come or that are violated, we can bring this up, and this gives the council a better streamlined process to remove board members and commissioners if they need to. So again, this just kind of goes over the code of conduct and how to interact, representing the commission, basically just trying to make sure that they're not, folks aren't going rogue and saying things outside of the commission and speaking on behalf of the commission, especially if they don't have approval or authority. Definitely highlighting the conflict of interest because several of the boards and commissions have people that have had some conflicts and having to recuse themselves, or should be recusing themselves. So just kind of goes over and highlights this information. We are a very active and engaged community, and so political involvement, just making sure that they are not representing themselves as the member of the board or commission that they're serving, as they are involved in political activities. Not saying that people cannot, because democracy looks well when people are involved. However, you just cannot represent the city and your capacity as a commissioner or board member at these events. And then again, the biggest thing is highlighting and outlining attendance as well, and knowing what is expected and what happens when they miss consecutive meetings or regularly scheduled meetings in any 12-month period. And then this just has them sign it, and it is on file with us. And then this also will go in tandem with training. So we are in the process right now of trying to finalize the training for staff liaisons right now. But also the part two to this is to have board members and commissioners also go forth in training in terms of, expectations, kind of going over this in detail as well and having them sign it. So that my goal is to have all of this as it is approved to be done within first quarter of 2026. And I apologize that it's taken so long to get to you all, but we have it. And the only thing that I was gonna say in terms of feedback is it's been brought up several times instead of citizen and making sure that we put resident. That is a huge thing that I wanted to highlight that's kind of glaring, but I want to change that as well. So yeah. And that's all. And happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions? Feedback? Yes.
Small question. Thank you. On the conflict of interest piece, I heard from someone on the board of, I think it was the Board of Housing Quality Appeals, there are certain circumstances where people have had to recuse themselves and that compromised quorum. So I'm just wondering, how often does that happen, and what are the mechanisms that we could potentially put in place to prevent that from happening?
That is a good question. I think it also might be, well, number one, I think the quorum issue is now ceased because they are now full.
Right.
And so that was the biggest thing, is they were working with a little tiny body, and those that were there had to recuse themselves. I do believe that was an issue with the mayoral appointment, and as a result, I think the person ended up having to resign because it was just too many conflicts that were happening there. So that person ended up resigning early on in the summer. So hopefully we don't run into that as an issue, because quorum won't be an issue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Friday.
Thank you. Two items. One, also on conflict of interest. I think it's kind of implicit there, but I wonder if we actually want to say to financially gain. Like, his personal gain is like a ambiguous concept. Like, if we vote on like a bike lane, I bike in the city, I benefit from that, you know, like.
Yeah.
Also, as statutorily defined, like appointed council members, I'm pretty sure like it's defined as like a financial interest.
Okay.
And all the disclosure requirements there around that,
Okay.
including the family members, I guess, as directed here. But that might be helpful to like. I've just found in my time on council that people don't have a good, like, there's not a good common understanding of what a conflict of interest is or means, and that it actually does have like definition as applied to us anyway through state law, and mirroring that as a financial conflict might be helpful. There's one other thing, I could, this, yeah, feedback. Second is local involvement piece, reflecting on that. I mean, thinking of my own beginnings in politics in Bloomington when I was running for office in 2019, like I told people that I served on the Commission on Sustainability. It was like part of my bio, and like, you know, people want to know how you're engaged in like civic space, basically. And we want people to engage in civic space and serve on boards and commissions, and we want them to be active politically as well. As long as they're not, I guess my gut is like, maybe this is overly limiting, and that like, as long as they're not representing themselves as like, or as long as they're not holding themselves out to represent the city or represent its views or represent the commission, which is already kind of covered elsewhere. I guess personally, I don't have a problem with folks saying like, the areas of public service they're engaged in as part of being engaged in political participation. So I'm curious to know what others think, and also just think a little bit more about that provision and where it's maybe where it's coming from, or if it could be more, narrowly crafted. I don't know.
When I was running, there was a Bloomington firefighter who knocked some doors for me, and he like went out of his way to make very clear, like, I am in the fire department, I'm not representing the fire department. So I think there are some ways around that, and it was like well taken at the door and everything. So I don't know. I also am not sure what his specific instructions were under BFD. And this was under a former administration.
Or maybe just changing the language, shall refrain from representing themselves, or as a representative of the board.
Of the city.
That's kind of repeating the representative verb, but still representing themselves. So they shouldn't identify themselves as representing a board or commission.
Right.
Right.
That.
That is covered
Yeah.
in the clause two parts above already. Maybe it makes sense to call it out in the political context specifically. Could you tell us more, Jennifer, about is that coming from somewhere else and mirroring another requirement from like an employee handbook, or like where that part came in?
So I was kind of looking back in my draft that I did early on. Now, actually, kind of what you were saying, because of course, I think it is important for people to say, hey, I'm a part of this board or commission. The intent is people not going to these events and going, I'm pro. As an example, if anybody watches this, I'm pro redistricting right now and I serve on the, I'm serving on the
Sure.
City of Chairs and Tables Commission. And so, we are saying this, that's the uh-oh moment where you can't do that. Certainly don't want to stifle people and highlighting what they're doing, but just at political events saying, yeah, I am, Joe Schno. And I'm on the City of Tables and Chairs, and I definitely endorse Councilmember Sidney Zulik for reelection, that type of thing. So I wanted to.
Appearance.
Exactly.
Endorsement.
Exactly. And so early on in my drafts that I'm looking at now, I actually kind of had a very bulleted point
Mhm.
so that people can understand, we're not trying to say.
Yeah.
You can't do this at all, because I do think that's a good point when people would ask the question. And so I think that we could go back to the drawing board with legal and
Mhm.
express, we need to kind of clean this up to make sure that we are not telling people, we don't want you to even say, that we don't want you to say any of that. We just want you to, because we did have a commissioner on one of the commissions speak at the State House
Mhm.
on behalf of the commission. And
Okay.
they did not
Well,
have, yep.
I'm okay with there being a standalone political involvement section to explicitly draw attention to the maybe additional sensitivity in the political context, but I guess I would prefer a definition that leaves room for people even describing their own biography, to be able to at least talk about their civic engagement or service, while making clear that, yeah, they can't represent that as any type of endorsement or anything like that.
Right.
There's also, sorry, I just accidentally clicked away from it. And under that same draft at the beginning, the very first sentence reads, how did I lose it? What is wrong with me?
It's late in the day.
I've had a day. Here it is. Any member may participate in a political or campaign activities. Remove the A. I think it makes more sense. In political or campaign activities. It's just maybe nitpicky, which it might not even matter anymore if this gets rewritten, but
So you said, remove the A.
yeah.
And political, okay.
So, in addition to the two uses of the word citizen, I'm glad you're gonna change that. Under conflict of interest, the last sentence says recuse him/herself from deliberation and voting.
Yep, themselves is what I called it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
So,
I did bring to Jennifer's attention that our office is exploring the continued use of Robert's Rules of Order as we research amendments to Title II. There are one or two council members who suggested maybe moving away from Robert's Rules. At least with respect to council, I don't think that would have any impact on this code of conduct. I think that it would be permissible for boards and commissions to use Robert's rules, and if council decides not to, I think that would be okay. But it is something I made Jennifer aware of.
Yeah, and I could ask Clerk Bolden about it as well. I tend to think that if we, because I saw in the title where, the Title II part, where it says that the parliamentary procedures outlines that for boards and commissions. I think if council changes it. For their part, it shouldn't affect boards and commissions as long as that part of Title II isn't changed. But I can double check to see if
Yeah.
if we're interpreting that correctly.
It isn't something that I've talked to the legal department about. Perhaps they would disagree.
Clerk Crossley, do you, what would you like from us? I mean, I don't think we have to approve this. I appreciate you bringing it to us and
Yeah.
taking our feedback.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. I think the next step is, I don't know if this is something that you all want to discuss overall as like entire council body. Because I can make the changes and meet with legal to go over the changes that we discussed. And then submit it back again for final approval. Or if you all are okay with. Yeah, well, let's just start there, like, I can meet with legal and we can kind of go over it, and then I can check with Clerk Bolden just to kind of give it. Bird's eye view one more time. And then maybe bring it back again in January. Or,
Do we need to see this again?
What's the adoption process, I guess?
Well, yeah, that's kind of hazy in my view too.
Yeah, are we gonna codify this or codify a requirement for a code of conduct that is otherwise? You know, assigned to someone or approved by. Like we, yeah,
Well, since we've started reviewing Title II, we've been more inclined to take things out.
right,
Put it in administrative manual than add things in.
but it would still be sort of subject to council approval in that instance, right, like the.
If it's in an administrative.
Right, but you still reference the products that dictate or govern a situation. But nevertheless, they're the products themselves or what you refer to as called out in code, and then the update process. Isn't a code change, it's just like a vote on the new version of the, it's kind of like CBU's like rules and regs stuff. It's not codified, but like we do approve the updated rules and regs. So they come to us sometimes with like an updated document. It's simply an update to the administrative manual or update to the code of conduct. That's my inclination, like it feels like a thing that we should approve formally, but it doesn't need to live in city code. As that, like all text. Anybody else thought about this? I don't know. That might be good.
Yeah, I'm thinking through it
Yeah.
also. I'm not sure that it would go into the Title II rules of procedure that we were planning on kind of matching up with council's portion. Because this would apply really as much, if not more, to the administration and its appointments to boards and commissions, but you raise a valid point, like where would it go?
Yeah, well, it might be important to have, like, I'm seeing the connection here between this and removal for cause as well.
Right.
And then we always had ambiguity about that. There were sort of like things that everyone agreed would probably constitute removal for, cause for removal, but like this and actually explicitly tying those things like might be the right approach. So yeah, I'm not sure which section of code or like again, the whole thing needs to be codified, but I think approving it or referring it through code is.
Well, I mean, we're gonna, on our agenda is to talk about chapter 2.12. Or we wanna move all those general provisions, so we could just add a provision about code of conduct.
Shall be maintained by the deputy clerk for X and as approved by council, and like that, whatever, periodic or as needed basis.
Or the office of the city clerk.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Oh. Put that in. Okay, so can we move on to,
Changes to city code.
yes, sorry, this agenda got a little mixed up, so there was supposed to be a heading that said boards and commissions, under which there was code of conduct and changes to city code. Because there are more changes to city code than just that, but yes, to be. Changes to city code about boards and commissions. So, as we discussed last time, we wanted to get feedback directly from 6 commissions that we might consider having county appointees for. So I think that, we have all, taken a look at that list and
Yes, also,
volunteered to reach out to 1 or 2 of those. Ready to get that list up or?
I'm doing the environmental commission and
I think-
transportation commission. Transportation commission doesn't meet again this year, but PC does.
And then there's the farmer's market.
yes. I have 2, I emailed them to you guys.
Yeah, and I'm doing cast commission, which also just. Or at all. So. That'll be something to talk about later.
At least not in January.
Okay, all right, so then we can move on to the draft code revision. Regarding the general provisions that apply to boards, commissions, and councils. So you'll see here, there is language, proposed, and thank you to, Attorney Bennett for preparing this. Which will move almost all of 2.08.020 into 2.12. The new section 2.12.010. So that would include the terms for appointment, the residential requirement, the removal for cause, the vacancies, majority vote, quorum, parliamentary procedure, officers, duties of the secretary, special meetings, and office space. Staff. So open to comments here, and I think we could add the code of conduct here so much. That may be after removal for cause, since we may want to, or before it, so that we can reference it.
That's fine with me. I don't have any other additions.
So you're thinking that would be a new paragraph 3?
Yes,
We can take this out, putting it simply together, that would cover.
any other feedback on this? I did reach out to the mayor's office, and I think they were fine with it, but let me just bring up that email to make sure.
I also discussed this with the legal department and the city attorney. Reviewed this track changes document as well, and had no issue with it. But I do remember seeing a communication from the deputy mayor as well.
So
About it.
there was something. Yes, so item 13 was about budgets, and we left that in the executive branch. Yes. Right. Change the number to 2 and 3 instead of 13. What about the intentional display of firearms? Would that be moved to, why would that not be moved to general permissions of boards and commissions?
I think it could be, yeah, good point.
And so for the budget, they wanted to leave boards and commissions in there.
That was my take on Gretchen's message.
County council. So Gretchen said, regarding the budget, council does prepare a budget, and so do several boards, such as RDC and NPA Advantage funds. Since the phrasing notes that a budget is required in accordance with processes defined by the mayor, and we may not require a budget for most boards, I think the wording is fine as is. So, yeah. Yes. Any other feedback?
Is the display of firearms piece, are we covered? I'm just curious. I think like, this comes up not often, maybe like most likely to come up in the city council meetings. And is the common council? I don't know if boards, commissions and councils are referred to here. Is the common council among the councils?
I believe that this wording, are you saying because of the state, so what I'm looking for, how we can't,
Preemption.
yes, thank you.
Well, no, more so just like, does putting this in the general provisions of boards, commissions and councils narrow its scope? Is that possible? To only apply to boards, commissions? Like I don't know how to better communicate this. I'm curious if city council is a council under this like chapter, right? Boards, commissions and councils. If not, does putting that firearms provision there sort of like implicitly say city council meetings are different and there is no anti-display of firearms provision for city council meetings, and that's probably not thing that's gonna happen. I don't know, like.
That's a good question.
There is a provision in 2.04, which is for the council.
Okay.
That mirrors this provision. I don't know that it's placed in the best location,
Got it.
but we can say that about almost everything.
Yeah.
2.04.
Gosh.
We'll get there.
That obviates the concern then, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna.
I'm just gonna also say, I think to your point, we looked at this earlier. I looked at this with Chief Deputy McDowell in our office. And we thought that councils meant like some of the councils from the various boards and commissions, like the
Right.
Farmers Market Advisory Council and such. And so we were saying that Title II is kind of cloudy when it comes to council. Because it's the city council or, it's referred to as common council, so we know it's common council, but then here it says council. So that's also something that to keep in mind as the quest to change continues.
Yeah, I perceive the word councils as not including the common council. By virtue of the fact that it's identified as a plural, and there's only one city council. And by the location of this language within the code itself.
Well, yeah, and all this stuff about staggered terms and
Yeah,
Yeah,
stuff
exactly.
like that doesn't apply. Okay, well, if staff could incorporate the things we discussed and maybe even have a draft, ordinance for us for the next meeting.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much. So the next oh, wait, we have to go to public comment. Let's have public comment on this issue of, changing the city code regarding general requirements for boards and commissions. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment? I do not see any hands raised. All right, so now we can go on to, item C, allowing discussion of legislation at first reading. So again, we have some draft language here. Page 9 of the packet. So there's the markup version and then there's a clean version after. So basically, we are removing um, the part that says we can't discuss at first reading. I'm also like losing any kind of articulateness.
You would like for me to walk through it since I've
Yes.
prepared it, I'd be happy
Please
to
do
do that.
that.
The new subsection A, would, first, clarify that, every ordinance shall be given at least 2 readings. So this is mostly about, discussion at first reading, but would also clearly contemplate, the idea of subsequent readings after, second reading. Then it does take a little bit of a detour there to explain how the process works, and this is in accordance with state statute, if you want to adopt an ordinance at first reading, that you have to have unanimous consent, at least 2/3 have to vote to adopt at first reading. And then says, oh, by the way, this doesn't apply to zoning ordinances because they have their special rules. We tried to make that as clear as possible, including making sure that, that it was stated the right way for the zoning ordinances. I bring that up mostly because, as I've shared with some folks, I'm not, the state statute lacks a little bit of clarity, so I tried to add a little bit in there, so it was not confusing. Then subsection B would really just talk about the ability to debate and amend both at first reading and subsequent readings. A little bit more of the procedure. Subsection C then just puts everything about resolutions all in one section. So really just sort of cleaning up overall. But the 2 big things are to allow for discussion and an amendment at first reading, and to allow for subsequent readings after a second.
Okay, and then we're also adding under the section about voting
Yes, thank you. I forgot about that.
that, if it's voted on, an ordinance shall be voted on the same day, only if everybody agrees, and then it's 2/3 vote. Well, actually, it's only about the 2/3 vote, right? It doesn't say about unanimous consent. That's in the previous section.
Well, actually, I have a question about item C, which is that, I wonder if it should mirror the language in item B that says upon motion made, seconded and approved. By a majority, because it was weird that section C, or what was, the part applying to resolutions, it's weird to me that it said provided there's unanimous consent. Like, why would you do it that way? Why would you treat resolutions differently than how we treat ordinances? So that just strikes me as an odd thing. But if we take that out and don't refer to the voting thing at all, it reads as like the resolution must be read, shall be read, like regardless of a vote, almost, and so.
Good point.
I would recommend parallel between items B and C.
Got it.
Any other feedback? List?
That may need to be 2 sentences to make that look clean, but yeah, I think,
Yeah,
I think it's great, thanks for doing that.
yeah, no, that'd be that.
so is this, all right, let's go to public comment. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment on the proposed, Title II change to allow discussion at first reading? All right, seeing none. So this is, I think it's in good enough shape that we could vote on it, or would you prefer to see an actual draft resolution or ordinance with whereas clauses before we vote?
I think with the board and commission liaison stuff, we probably added an extra step. Cause we brought it to council and we kind of came back and wrote the legislation and then passed it again at the, I don't know if that's necessary. Especially just given like how much work it requires. I would prefer to wait until there's a resolution. To go
Before we vote,
yeah,
That's fine.
it would be ordinance, but yeah.
Yeah.
great.
Okay, that works for me.
Yeah, and I think, at next week's council meeting, I could, give
Yeah.
reports so people are aware and my colleagues want to give feedback.
I think that's
That's a
perfect.
great idea.
Yeah, this might not have, unanimous support, listen.
So the next item is allowing for a consent agenda. And I don't know if Attorney Bennett, if you want to go through this one as well.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. We talked about the idea of using consent agenda at the last meeting. And the feedback that we heard was that sounded of interest to the committee. So we did put together this language to allow for the use of a consent agenda. We intentionally made it very broad and included a lot of categories. And that was really just so that this group, this committee could have the discussion about what you think is appropriate to include and not to include in a consent agenda. The types of things that are included in here that are pretty common to be included in consent agendas are approval of meeting minutes, acceptance of reports, this job description change. That's a little bit of an odd category, but that would mostly apply to council staff if things like that. Yeah, it would really just be, that one. Some of the ones that we additionally included, and this was based on our research of what other legislative bodies in Indiana have chosen to include, would be appointments to boards and commissions. And acceptance of reports. I know a lot of times there are verbal presentations that go along with those reports, but in the case of a report that is just being submitted, that could go on a consent agenda. And then the one I'm saving for last is first readings of ordinances. It is not common for common councils to do first readings by consent agenda. But we included that in there and can talk a little bit about Evansville as the example. They do allow for first readings of ordinances. The way that they do those is they still read the ordinances by title, by number, title, and synopsis. They do it at the very beginning of the agenda item on consent. The clerk will read them all together, just one after the other. And then they would get approved as a whole unless a council member says, I'd like to pull one out and take it through the normal course. The intersection between this issue and the last one that we just talked about is it really is just sort of a decision point for council members individually and the council as a whole. Whether, they've got something, there's an ordinance that may be fairly routine that nobody has really any interest in talking about at first reading, or instead, there's something that, would be really good to have an earlier presentation by the city administration, and then some discussion, about the item that may set it up, for better decision making at second reading.
I like it. I like the flexibility.
Yeah, I appreciate, my one concern was, well, what if there is, say, an appointment to a board or commission that we wanted to discuss? I like that we can pull that out.
Yeah,
That
so
was my-
there's flexibility there. Sydney and I met to discuss this. She had volunteered to do that, and we took a more inclusive approach, thinking that it might be easier for the committee to see everything and then change something if there wasn't support for it. There've been several letters that have come before council too, and potentially letters could be part of this. Let's see, if there's a section, where maybe the president can include materials or add items to, non-controversial items to the consent agenda, but it has the potential to make meetings more effective without taking away the flexibility of council members to discuss items, if that's warranted.
One question I have that I'd love to grapple with a little bit as we, the previous ordinance, draft, is the potential uncertainty that allowing discussion, amendments and even a vote, if we decide to take it at first reading, introduces to members of the public in particular, but also to council members or anyone else. And how to it might just be, there's a bit more uncertainty, and that's okay, but I am mindful of that and trying to, because people show up to meetings, it's a lot to ask folks to come to our meetings, right? And so, if they don't have clarity or certainty about which meeting they're gonna have a chance to speak at, or, when a vote's gonna happen, that's not a great outcome. And so that's my biggest concern actually with, opening up this first reading thing. And I actually wonder if we developed a norm around how we wanted to use the consent agenda, that could be a signal, it could be council members are responsible for letting staff know before packet release or something like that, that if they want to, and maybe it's the president's job, I don't know, but if they want to discuss substantively at first reading, that item would not appear on the consent agenda, and items that we plan to just pass right through to a second reading would appear on the consent agenda, and that could be a signal to the public. And that would allow the additional flexibility then to kind of do the thing we're trying to do with first readings, but also have some schedule management, traffic keeping dimensions.
Require people to read the packet in advance.
What's that?
Requires people to read the packet in advance.
Indeed, yeah. I'm not sure if that's fully baked, what I just described, it's I don't know, that.
So, I mean, your point is taken though
Yeah.
about the public not knowing then when to show up, and
Yeah.
that could cause a problem. I mean, on the other hand, I really like the idea of trying to consolidate and make things a little smoother, so that when we do have big issues that are at the end of the night, we don't end up with, like we did last week with the towing issue, where people sat there for their whole evening.
Yeah.
So this might cut that down.
There's always, of course, the option that if a member of the public isn't present during the first reading, to make a comment before the public. There still would be a second reading where that would be possible. At least since I've been here, there hasn't been strong support or a push by council members to to vote on matters during first reading, so I don't necessarily see the consent agenda altering that. So I,
Well, we're not allowed to currently, so how can you gauge whether there's interest?
well, state law permits it. I mean.
No, but according to our own code, we're not allowed
Well,
to discuss.
yeah, but I don't know to what extent. That would be supportable at law because it differs with the NBS. But, you know, nonetheless, I still think the first reading should change. I think that in the sense that there should be discussion permitted, that Title II should be amended to support that.
I would also just like be shocked if all 9 of us were in favor of voting on something. On the first reading that later turned out to be controversial. Like, I think that we all have like our fingers so like in different corners of the community that like one of us would surely. Hopefully. Right?
I would think so.
I would think.
I would hope.
Yeah, I mean, I would think we tend to know, we tend to have an idea ahead of time as things are coming up, okay? This one's gonna take a while.
So I really want to remove first reading ordinances from being allowed on a consent agenda. I think it makes things very confusing. We're already planning to introduce a change about first readings. Then having it possibly on a consent agenda where it could be pulled from at any time. I just think it's too muddled. Only one other city does it, as far as we know. It's also not, you know, it's not saving that much time because you still have to read it. Unlike the other things on the consent agenda, you don't agree.
Is it just emotions?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would be in favor of deleting number 3.
It just becomes, I guess, time consuming when there's a lot of first readings and someone's on Zoom, so we have to vote by roll call for every introduction. So.
It is a little more time. Sure.
Yeah.
Couple minutes.
Yeah, I guess it's just like,
Yeah.
which one
Some,
are we gonna prioritize? Which,
Yeah.
either one is fine.
I understand where you're coming from as well, I'm fairly agnostic. I do think we're gonna have to grapple with like, ideally providing some. Well, yeah, I don't, I'm just anticipating this issue without certainty around. What it is we're doing right now, with those readings. That's kind of. Except that I was workshopping the idea of whether an agenda could be useful, providing additional clarity. Yeah,
I wouldn't mind moving forward with this without first reading, and then if for any reason we decide in a year, hey,
sure.
we're really rocking this consent agenda thing. Enhance the first reading, let's combine them, collab. That's fine with me. I don't mind leaving it out for now,
I'm good with
Yes,
that.
it certainly could be added over.
thank you.
But what about adding approval of letters from the council regarding particular issues?
Ooh,
I mean, those tend to be more controversial. So,
Yeah.
No,
some of
it's-
them maybe not.
Yeah,
I mean, I think the one about the EPA standards
yeah.
was not very controversial.
But usually if we're bringing a letter, it's because we wanna say something about a thing.
Right.
We
well,
have
that
that
was
attention
it.
to
Yeah,
that
yeah.
topic,
like
yeah.
actually
Well,
give
and then
prioritize, Yeah,
the letter writer can say, I wanna pull that.
right, that's true. I'm good either way about it.
Yeah, I don't have big feelings either way.
You know, and it could slide under subparagraph 6.
True.
You know, actions
Yeah.
designated by the council president. So I don't know that you would have to specifically call out letters, although you could.
Well, we're kind of. It's unclear right now where letters go in. They were putting them under council member reports, which is pretty place. So that could be a question for the bigger overhaul. I don't think. You ready to go to public?
Ready?
Is there any member of the public who would like to comment on the proposal to add a consent agenda? Don't see any hands. So back to the committee. For this one also, should we wait until we have a actual draft ordinance?
I think so.
And I'm happy to work with staff on the whereas clauses.
That's fantastic.
All right, we have 4 minutes requiring council member sponsorship for all items of legislation.
I'll take this one.
Yes.
I had expressed interest in this previously. I think we did staff look into it at some level to see if other places do this? I thought we had some examples of other cities that do. Maybe I'm misremembering.
Oh,
What Wayne's coming to mind, I don't know if that's true.
Ah,
Is it?
I know I've seen this somewhere,
Yeah.
I'm just not entirely sure, so.
The idea is like, I think there's a couple elements of it. One is that, why is the mayor empowered with with putting legislation on? I mean, there's a track keeping version or a responsibility already for the president. Who could say, no, this isn't ready, staff might inform that, right? And like, we don't put it on the agenda. But like, it's sort of assumed that even absent a sponsor, I mean, that's the practice, you know, that anything that for the most part, the mayor would want to put on our agenda can go there. And, I'm not sure, like it just strikes me as odd, because the mayor's not a member of the body, and like, it seems like a member of the body should sponsor, all legislation. So it just seems like a more natural thing, given the nature of what what legislation is and what our role is. I also think it would encourage, like, there's no shortage of things that come to us that are probably like, could have used more time or public input. It creates it like first, including stuff we were hearing just last week, and like, so in some respects. And so it kind of puts a check in the system of like, actually staff has to like, not just submit something to you, they have to find a council member, like talk to them about it. The council member, if they're gonna have their name on it, probably wants to like take a look and maybe ask a question or two about like, what'd you do by way of public outreach, like, and anything. And I don't think it'll be onerous. I think it could encourage healthier communication and collaboration, and also save time by functioning as a little bit of a check or a filter to ask a few things before it actually, is being discussed. So I'm curious about, there may be special exceptions with like appropriations or the budget or something where we're like, I'm curious if we'll run into something like that, where we can't, with some things actually statutorily, the mayor is empowered to bring in a sense. But otherwise, I know it requires a little more exploration from a legal perspective. Obviously, we want to get input on it too from colleagues and from the mayor's administration. But that's the rationale. I'm curious for other members' thoughts about it. Like, I'm generally supportive based on what I know now, but yeah.
I totally agree with you. I think it's a good idea.
I like the idea of, yeah, maybe getting a little bit deeper into it to make sure that it is ready for prime time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have strong feelings either way, but I do like that aspect of it,
Sure.
for sure.
Yeah, I'm also agnostic, but I do think that it would get more council member buy-in. And I like that,
I think it could have, possibly prevented the 2 towing ordinances from coming forward when they were ready.
Agreed. I don't think it'll be a fail-safe. It'll depend on whoever the sponsor is, if they actually. It could just be that any number of us are just like, yeah, I'll sponsor anything, bring it through. Say it's ready, it's ready. But I can say, yes, speaking for myself, I would always give it a full reading and probably ask some questions before I'd be willing to sponsor something. So, yeah, it could be helpful in that way.
Okay.
yes, in terms of the logistics, is that how you envision it, like, an ordinance would be prepared? And a draft would be provided to a potential council member to ascertain if they're interested in supporting it.
Good question. Yeah, you could imagine staff, a department head coming to council staff and saying, who do you think would be a good sponsor for this? Or if they have if it's a transportation item, I serve on the transportation commission, I might be a natural person to be you know, the sponsor for Title 15 changes, for instance. And so I think it encourages like actually hopefully better direct working relationships between staff and non-council staff and council members. But I think it could also come through to council staff and say, hey, this item's looking for a sponsor, if they were a volunteer, or you could all even direct them to somebody. So I think there's some flexibility there. We probably we could think through it more, but I think probably some with arms that emerged through. Again.
Got it.
Yeah,
Can we go to public comment? I have to leave.
oh, yeah. I didn't necessarily have public comment on this item, but is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on this item we added to the agenda? Requiring council member sponsorship for legislation? No. I don't see any hands. Okay, so I think let's keep this on the agenda for next time. And maybe staff, if you want to prepare some questions and statistics and things, and we can.
I could commit to putting together like a less than 1 page, like rationale statement as well. That's helpful, like.
Yeah.
Chris Lesman, I'm thinking a workshop it tomorrow.
Right. All right, well, we may not be the same committee
Yeah,
as time we meet, but
I'll be here.
maybe we will, so. It'll be nice to continue.
Happy holidays.
So we are adjourned, thank you.
Thank you.